situation?
We had discussed it, city manager and myself, because they need an answer sooner than later. I don't know if, Scott, if you want to.
Well, I think that, yeah, the comment is this is probably more of a conversation about to move ahead with the county's request for the HRA. The information that's in the workshop packet here is basically the same information or some of the same information that was in the last workshop and discussion. And then some additional items that were added this afternoon at Councilmember Wong's request, which I think would help have some conversation about that with the county resolution. I can just say that I have not heard a lot of necessarily support for the county's request, and so the idea was that there was going to would be specific conversation in the county's request for the HRA at this meeting. If it did not move forward from here, and there was just a consensus, basically what I would do is send a letter back to the county that we are not interested in participating at this time. If the council, after the discussion here this evening, wanted to look at potentially supporting this, then it would have to be brought forward to the council meeting tonight to take some action on that. But based on feedback that I've been getting was to have that conversation here at the workshop. Also, I'm doing a full HRA meeting. Is definitely a planned event, and we've been working with Century College. They've been updating the plans and scaling the plans for the student house and coming up with a full budget for that, that they would see through, and would be a budget that would then be considered and adopted, so that the majority of that work all flows through the college. But moving forward with there as a kind of a commitment in that house for this year, to then also talk in depth of what does the HRA look like in the future? Is that something that, after this fall, with that commitment, do we want to go a different direction? Is the student-built housing still part of this process, or is it something that, the HRA is doing more of I guess I'd almost look at it as something similar that we did with the Anchor Block site, where we might be acquiring properties to clean them up and then make them available to developers to develop on their own instead of us being in doing full construction and things like that. So I think an HRA meeting that would have a pretty lengthy agenda and a lot of discussion of potentially revamping the whole program, from that program to loans to our own facades and different things within the city. So that's kind of how this was put together. The county is looking for an answer, and again, the feedback that I've been getting is not a lot of support, and the question of whether we even need to have a vote on this.
Okay, so I guess my question was more kind of procedural, like typically when we're going to discuss HRA things, we would meet as an HRA because it is a different body, but it sounds like it's just because there's no action items, it sounds like, potentially. So I guess that's okay, but I think in the future, if we're going to have any discussion related to HRA, we should officially meet as an HRA body just to make sure we're following all the proper policies and procedures.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Thorson, in your packet, and I don't know who prepared this resolution. I think it was the county, but I don't know that. It does at the very end say their sample resolution says resolved. The city council for the city of North St. Paul authorizes the Ramsey County Housing and Redevelopment Authority. I'm on page 22 of your packet.
Yeah, and again, I'm just saying, I mean, if we're gonna meet as an HRA, we should, or have discussions in our HRA, we should officially meet as an HRA. We had the last HRA meeting was on Zoom. It was, I believe, it was January 21st, and it was just to approve the appraisal of the house on Second. And I understand that every member here is also a member of the HRA, but it's a separate budget. It's a separate levy that's approved. When we meet as an HRA, we're recognized as commissioners. It's just, there's a separation here. And that's all. I was just questioning why we're not doing that when we're having this discussion. But
And
my answer's been,
yeah.
my question's been answered, so.
As it relates to that house, not to jump in on this, but as it relates to the house, that is controlled by the HRA, so that should be a HRA discussion. I thought the question was, why is the resolution as it relates to the county HRA not being done at an HRA level? And I think the answer is because it takes a vote from the city council, not the HRA, to join.
Sure. My question is just why we're gonna have discussion about HRA related things and not meet as an HRA, but that's been answered. So thank
Right.
you.
Okay, so any other discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Oppose, motion carries. So we have the few topics, and one is the review of the North St. Paul Housing Redevelopment Authority and Ramsey County request to levy. City Manager Dudek.
Again, Mayor and Council, thank you. And a lot of this information, this basic first section was the same information that we had provided previously for discussion. And Kyle from our finance department and our finance director had gone over some of those in detail, and we can do that again. A lot of this is supporting information of where our HRA is today, the funds associated with it, and what it's been used for. And then there's some census data that was included with that from previous. And I just want to draw attention to the information that Councilmember Wong had us add this afternoon. And I think that might be something that Councilmember Wong, I don't know if you want to specifically, if there's areas that you want to specifically talk about or look at that we could bring up, that you requested that information to be added. Again, we're trying to provide as much information with this and to really answer the question for the county as if this is something that the city council is interested in moving forward with at this time. I will tell you that in leading up to this last week on Friday, I had called Ramsey County and I actually talked to in the city of St. Paul and found out that the city of St. Paul had passed unanimously had passed this resolution to support this with Ramsey County. However, the big piece that they added to their resolution is that a minimum of 50% of the dollars levied by Ramsey County will go back to the city of St. Paul and be spent on the city of St. Paul projects. A minimum of 50% of those dollars. So
It doesn't matter what year or anything, it's 50% every year.
50% every year. So, the discussion in the past has been that this would generate approximately $12 million. So based off of that resolution and county finalizing their resolutions, and that really brings the pool down to $6 million potentially to the suburbs. And St. Paul can apply along with the other cities to compete for those dollars, but a minimum of 50% will go back to the city of St. Paul.
Councilmember Wong, do you want to maybe? Okay, I don't think we got that information.
It is in your packet.
Oh, it did come late.
Yeah, so I have the information. Let me find it here. Let's see, St. Paul. So I have included in here, it says the St. Paul approved resolution on your tab in there. That is in the packet. And it is on, let me find it here. Number 7, it's on page 19. On the tab is listed St. Paul approved resolution on page 19. So bullet number 7 is what they added to their resolution that they passed. Again, it talks about at least 50% of any tax levied by Ramsey County HRA will be spent on projects located in the city of St. Paul. So I did talk to Commissioner Reinhardt about that on Friday, and she was going to look into that and see if there was anything that the county could do to help control that for the suburbs. There something that the county can put in that a minimum of 50% of the funds would be allocated to the suburbs. But as it stands right now, that at least 50% would go to St. Paul.
So I guess
Councilmember Thorson.
how, so Ramsey County has passed a part of their resolution that they're in so long as at least 50% of the county levy is spent within the boundary of St. Paul.
Correct.
Sorry, was that Ramsey County or St.?
St. Paul, St.
Okay,
Paul,
the city of St. Paul.
city of St.
City
Paul.
of St. Paul,
Yes,
Okay,
their resolution saying we're in as a part of the Ramsey HRA, what we're being asked to join,
correct.
so long as 50% of that Ramsey County levy is spent within the city of St. Paul.
Correct.
Just trying to understand how that, like now, so the city of St. Paul is, what approximation are they contributing to the?
It's very close to that 50%. And that's where they listed at least 50%. So they'll basically get back what they've put into it through the city of St. Paul.
And so if we were to do something similar to that, what would our allocation percentage be? I mean, they gave a rough estimate that'd be about $45 per the median home, but do they have a total dollar amount of what the
it
city?
was about 2.5 to 3% of our contribution. I think it's in the packet somewhere. I'd have to find it, but I think they said about 2.5 to 3% of North St. Paul residents would be contributing to that 12 million.
And we don't know that dollar amount.
But that,
Whatever that-
I think,
Yeah, so that was, so if Ramsey County is estimating that this levy will be 12 million and St. Paul is saying, okay, we're in, so long as our contribution, which is roughly 6 million, is spent in St. Paul each year.
correct.
So now that leaves the rest of Ramsey County with potentially 6 million unless St. Paul is awarded a greater percentage. I mean, that's where my concerns are, is that, you know, we're being asked to contribute to this, but after that, I mean, what say do we have in it? They tell us now, oh, yes, we're gonna seek your input and ask that, but
And I think that was some of the, in talking to Commissioner Reinhardt now, with this happening, is there some type of check and balance that can be put in place that, again, that it would leave at least 50% to the remaining suburbs, so that St. Paul is not an at least, that they're at 50%. And then the remaining 50% could be allocated to the suburbs that are competing for projects.
so we don't know what our total dollar amount would be. You know, St. Paul's, they're saying 6 million would be their annual contribution, but we don't know what our total dollar amount.
Well, they were 50% of the tax contribution.
Well, if we're at 3%, it'd be about $360,000, I'm assuming.
50% of,
3%. If
oh,
our,
3%, correct. And we're currently levying our maximum, so that we couldn't increase, we couldn't say, well, let's increase our own HRA levy and have our own control, because we're already levying the maximum possible. So the only way that we could potentially leverage additional dollars is to participate, but then that's on a application basis and project basis.
and again, I think if we go to, what we want to put a dollar amount so we get our money back, we already have a HRA. We're already putting money into the HRA.
I guess it also depends on, looking at our comprehensive plan and are we reaching our goals as an HRA and as a city addressing affordable housing? It's an issue all over, but it's also an issue here in North St. Paul. And I guess that's, warrants that a robust conversation about the HRA is, are we doing all that we can do to maintain affordable housing in our community? Because according to our comp plan, we're at 93% of affordable housing. We have naturally occurring affordable housing. That's a lot of our city. So how do we maintain that for our residents? Because gentrification is going to happen. So how do we maintain affordable housing in our community and in the surrounding communities. Because I think part of the trade-off is, is if the surrounding communities don't build housing, we're going to probably be taxed for other things like social services, because treating and paying for homelessness and near homelessness is really expensive compared to housing. So that's kind of the trade-off and where I'm coming from in terms of, that angle is it will come elsewhere if it doesn't get addressed in housing.
And I think just so the council's aware, in talking to Commissioner Reinhardt also, there is, this is all talked about affordable housing, but at least as she's explaining it, these dollars potentially would be available for a wide variety of use. I mean, they could be used for environmental cleanup, they could be used for facade improvements in the downtown, they could be used for a wide variety of things. As she's describing it. I mean, this is talked about affordable housing and maintaining that naturally reoccurring affordable housing and being able to make repairs and things on homes available. But it seems like they're promoting this as a wide-reaching possibility and not just affordable housing.
And I think it goes back to what Councilmember Wong says, is how are we moving forward now, looking at our HRA? I think we
Right.
really need to take a good look at it. And, are we using part of it for affordability and,
And my comment to that, I think that's really something that we really need to take a hard, long look at the direction with the HRA, because the past 11 years of the HRA has been primarily used for our student-built housing project. And those homes have not been affordable. I mean, they have been market rate housing that has been created out there to, take out a blight out of a neighborhood or something like that. So they've really been created as a market rate housing. And is there a change? Is there a different direction the council would like to go on that? With the market that's out there today, with things, again, are we more of an acting on more of an environmental cleanup, making these sites available to others? Are we doing our own internal loan programs, something similar or different than what we did previously? How do we restructure this? I mean, granted, we're only talking about, what we're able to levy right now is what, roughly $180,000 a year, I believe, is what our HRA, and we're doing our maximum levy now. That's the only difference. We would not have access to, potentially that $6 million pool, but it's an application process. It's something that you have to apply for. There's no guarantee that you would get it, but there's an opportunity there that you could, where what we're doing internally would limit us to that, approximately $180,000 a year.
and it's funny, as we're doing all this redevelopment and improving the housing stock, our market values are going up. We're losing that percentage, like you say, for affordable housing. It's almost like you're doing something good, but you're also creating a gap
Exactly.
between what we should be at.
Yeah, exactly.
We have to strike a balance, I think.
And that's the point. I don't know how we get to, to maintain that, because the market values and everything have gone up. What was it? 16% in the last year have gone up
2 years.
in the last 2 years, and they're just increasing. And some of these homes that are selling are unbelievably, homes that sold, 15, 17 years ago for $85,000 are selling that same house. Granted, they're, over $300,000 today. And how do we maintain that level within the community, and what kind of programs can we offer to do that?
I guess we could talk about this all night too. And
Yeah, and I wanted to make sure that, that you've seen the links that we're at here. So this was, your tab is additional information, Ramsey County HRA levy. So there's several different links that were added in here that Councilmember Wong had recommended that we add in here, a resource for us to look at. But certainly want to take the time to talk about this evening here. And if there's any questions, we've got our finance is here also. If there's anything we can answer. one of the things I seen in St. Paul's resolution, same thing, they called out that they're, retain their right to opt in now or opt out into the future. That's there. I want to make sure, council's aware of that. If we decide to opt in or opt out at this point, it's not something forever. It can always be changed, but this would be for this upcoming tax year. If we opt in now, this would be for taxes 22 and basically programming for 23.
We can always opt in.
Yes.
Councilmember Wine.
Yeah, if I could just quickly run through a couple of the links. The first one being the minnesotacompass.org. And then there would be at a glance facts, and there's one that's cost burden households by type. And so just so we know that 30% of someone's income allocated to housing is considered cost burden. So at this point, from 2015 to 2019, and that could have changed now because we're in a whole different market, that 41.9%, so about 42% of our households are cost burden. So that's people living and owning homes. And then renters, that's 58%. Oh yeah, there's a cost burden button just right up north there. Yep. Yep. And so that's just something for us to think about when we're as a baseline thing for us to move toward, because that's pretty substantial if you compare it on a county level.
Is it page? You have a page number on that?
A page number on the.
That's a link.
Oh, it's a
Oh, that's the
link.
link.
My
Okay.
apologize. Yeah. Which it should be in the packet because I think Jenny added it. So, but just, for us to consider that that's where we've been and potentially the direction we're heading because housing prices are going up. If you look at the income of our community, we have a very working class community. And correlated to that, one that has lower education comparatively. So not necessarily people are making more money at this point. Just something to consider. Are there any thoughts on that?
Well, I guess, I just struggle with trying to comprehend now how basically government is going to try to get involved with housing. I'm trying to, basically look at things we've got a proposed budget increase of 9.9%. This is certainly going to add to that if we were to participate. And there's all these things and programs and stuff. But meanwhile, what's the core function of government is to provide essential services. And I know that means different things to different people, but to me, essential services are public safety, infrastructure, and just your essential, operations here at City Hall. And, we've got a lot of needs in the infrastructure realm. And I think this is outside of that core focus of what we should be looking at. So that's why I just have a really hard time getting behind a proposal like this, especially when it's a unique situation where, a lot of cities don't have that option to opt in or out. North St. Paul and St. Paul does. Especially if there's no guarantee that there's not going to be a direct benefit to our residents for any of these programs, other than the argument that, well, we're in a bigger, broader picture with Ramsey County. But, there's certainly arguments that can be made there, but, I look at it as we're elected to represent the best interests of North St. Paul, and it seems like we've got other things we need to focus on before we expand into these other areas of maybe, to me, in my opinion, outside of our core focus of what we need to be addressing, and that's essential services. Now, obviously housing is essential, but I don't know, even if we were to participate and if we were to be guaranteed whatever we contribute, if it's $300,000 or even $1 million, how much of a dent is that going to make in this. I think, we've got a lot of projects on board right now that are privately driven, these apartment buildings and these townhome complexes that certainly, I think in the long term, going to help ease the housing demand, and that might help this, but like you say, we can always opt in at any point. I mean, we could also just opt in now and opt out later, but from a perspective of being responsible to the taxpayers, I think at this point, this is just not something we should be getting into.
Councilmember, any other comments? Councilmember Peterson?
No, I'm agreeing with council member Larson. I just don't want to double tax our constituents at $45 a person. So I'm not in favor of it. Thank you.
Councilmember Wong, you want to say anything more? Or?
I just think that it's if we have an HRA, we have an obligation. If we have a comp plan that was approved by city council to address affordable housing and make it livable, that's within our work as a city. And I am in favor. I've heard from also constituents in favor of this and how they've benefited from affordable housing options and home ownership. So it makes sense to me.
Councilmember Cole?
So is it an all in or all out, or is it a compromise? Would we be all in with Ramsey County and forego North St. Paul? So there's not an additional cost to, basically they would be a couple dollars more. Or would it be maintain both or only maintain North St. Paul? I mean, what are the options out here that we're looking at? Because I've got opinions every which direction, of course. Overall, I believe that HRA is critical. I think that the one that we currently have today can potentially work harder than what we've done with it. Again, it's just a lot of it is a matter of managing time and managing priorities. And I don't necessarily know if the HRA in North St. Paul has been given the priority of some of the other things based on everything that's been going on in the community, and if it's been utilized and the direction given. I've received emails on both sides of this. A couple of them were very, very compelling, and that without affordable housing, they use the word Section 8. I don't believe that's a term that we use anymore. But without that, they wouldn't have been able to get on their feet and work their way out of it there. So there are some positive things held. But I got to be honest with you, I'm just really leery jumping in right now. The wording that came out of St. Paul concerns me. I don't know how St. Paul would shore up their funding. Does that mean they get at least 50% every year? Does that mean they might, they put a they put a large program together and they're guaranteeing themselves funding out of that pot, as opposed to another community might have full access to that whole bucket of money 1 year for one project. I have concerns based on the way that it's been worded and presented to me. I would love to, my opinion, sit out year one and reevaluate and let let the county get some things squared away, let the city of St. Paul get a few things squared away, let some of the other neighboring communities that don't have a voice or have an opinion, and take a look at how that opts in.
And it does say that with the city of St. Paul, that as long as this is authorized by the county, that at least 50% would be spent in. So it's not just a 1 year thing. It's as long as this program is authorized by the county.
Right, but I mean, would they take 50% of it every year, or would they take 100% of it 1 year? And it's how they shore up the 50% was my question.
Correct.
I think the minimum is 50%.
Yes.
Annually.
Yeah, annually. So then they would be competing for the other 50% across all suburbs within the county.
Which could potentially limit the size and the scope of the other developments and things the other cities wanted to do.
Unless the county board takes some action to prevent that from happening.
So do we need to do a resolution then, or we just?
If there is not support to move forward, the only time we would need the resolution, if we were going to do the resolution, to give to the county to do the taxing. If we're not going to support it, it would just be a letter that I would send to the county that we will not be participating at this point.
I think we're kind of there. I don't think we need to vote on it.
No, if you're going to
The
enter,
feeling that we're not,
if you're going to enter the program, I'd encourage you to vote because they've got an approved resolution there. But if it's not to enter it, there is no action necessary. But I do think it would be important to make sure that Scott sends in a letter so we don't leave them hanging fire.
Right. Right. And that would be something that if that's kind of the consensus, that was something I do right away because the county is looking for that notice to be able to move forward because they need to take action here by July 1st.
everybody okay with that? Scott, send in a letter?
You have a
We're almost
choice.
But we can opt in at any time here, so
Correct.
we have that option. So, all right. I gotta get used to this new. Purchasing policy updates.
All right, yep, our next item, I'll turn that over to our finance department, our finance director, and Kyle also to speak on the proposed updates on our purchasing policy.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for having me. So we just have some policy updates. We're looking for feedback from council based on auditors' recommendations. And they recommended that we edit the policy to include all increases to contract price, whether through change orders or otherwise, be approved by city council, and that when city council approves an increase to contract price, also consider requiring additional contractor bonds or vote to waive such bonds. And we put in some template language into our purchasing policy, and after reviewing it, we actually wanted to make one more additional edit to it. Here it is right here. So we just add a bullet point right on page 3 of the policy that would indicate any increases to contract price, including change orders, amendments, are to be approved in accordance with this purchasing matrix, this quick reference guide, for the total contract price, original plus subsequent increases to the contract, which may acquire additional approvals depending on if you go from one bucket to another. And just 2 more updates we had in here, just under Appendix B in our purchasing policy. For any approved purchases that have subsequent increase in cost, increases are required to go through the same approval process as the original purchase. And then we're going to just add, along with any further approvals required, depending on the increase, if it changes bucket. And this last portion on page 74 of your packet is just updating that language on the performance and payment bonds to include that council should review increases to contract price and determine if they would like an increase to the performance and payment bonds required. Yeah. Any questions or feedback?
Do you feel pretty comfortable with these?
It's pretty boilerplate language you're going to be putting in there. Nothing, and we spoke to our auditors on it. We feel pretty confident in it.
This would get the auditors off your back.
Yes.
Any questions for Kyle?
Kyle, can you go back to the language about how change orders will be processed? I think I understood what you said, but read the language a little differently.
Right here.
Yeah.
So We won't, as I mentioned, after looking it over, we wanted to add a little bit to, because if we just require the same approval process as the original purchase, if we buy something for $10, or say we're gonna spend $10 and then come back saying, oh, it's actually gonna be 30 grand. We just do the same process, it'll just be under that first approval. So we're gonna say any subsequent changes in approval as well.
The only thing I would raise with that is if we have a situation that is a $250,000, so you have to use lowest responsible bidder. If we have a change order in the amount of $5,000, I don't think you want to go through lowest responsible bidder for a $5,000 change order.
So, yeah, there could be, yeah, maybe it's not, what's the word for it? Maybe not be easiest, but it's technically what we should be doing.
Wow. Lowest responsible bid for a change order?
Well, just having city council reviewing it, the change
council
order.
review. I just, for any approved purchase that have subsequent increases in costs, the increases are required to go through the same approval process. Going back to council.
Oh, I see what you're, yeah, so
Yes. Council approval.
we,
yes.
I can reference this.
Right.
This is what you meant.
Clear reference
Yeah.
to that, yeah.
Okay, yeah, for
That's all
sure.
I'm saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can you explain that again?
So I think what, in part, what the auditors were saying is if contracts are, you approve a contract, all contracts are brought to the council. You approve it, you see a price. If all of a sudden a bunch of change orders start to roll and we don't ever come back and give you some look back on that or highlight it, we just run it through a list of claims. Candidly, the council, unless you catch it in the list of claims, is under the impression that the original contract amounts stood. So what we're saying is we have a purchasing policy in place that says for these dollar amounts, here's how the process would look. I would recommend to just refer back to that grid, which I think is what Kyle is saying too. And then do a reconciliation with the council. Look, the original bid came in at $250,000. We've met on site. There's another 10 grand worth of work that needs to be done. We're going to go out and do the process of obtaining 2 quotes. We're not going to just necessarily give it to the underlying contractor. As a practical matter, your contractor on site usually has a bidding advantage at that point because they're not going to have mobilization costs, or they'll already have product in space. But we are saying we're going to do our due diligence and see if we get the lowest number. What I didn't want to see, when I read this, go back through the original process to do a $250,000 project is pretty encumbering with, publications and notices and stuff like that. So for a $5,000 change order, I would encourage you to just go back to your grid, which says, go grab 2 quotes or direct negotiation, which is what the law allows for, in my opinion. But so there's the process to get that change order, but then there's the reconciliation with the council to know that, hey, this project is now coming in 10 grand over the original bid. But I would just clear that up to make sure we're going to rely on the grid, not the original process is all.
But you can do that.
Yeah, and I'll make sure to run it by attorney as well.
Any questions for Kyle?
Well, as far as clearing up audit comments, I mean, we can do all sorts of modifications. It's just the policies need to be followed. That's how the audit comments go away, is if we follow the policies. And I have no problem with these. I think this is the exact example that I shared, in that, if Mack and Meyer for hire are constantly the low responsible bid and they get the bid, but they know, well, North St. Paul, they never question change orders. And then they constantly end up being, at the end of the day or end of the project, the highest bid. Doesn't that just kind of circumvent the whole lowest responsible bid process? So that's kind of, I think, what this addresses, is that, when we have these change orders, and they're bound to happen for various reasons, we still need to look into it just to add that level of protection for us, to make sure that people aren't gaming the system and doing things knowing that, well, we know what it takes to get the lowest bid. We've done work before, we'll make it up through change orders. That stuff needs to be monitored closely, and to have this in part of the policy, I think, just makes sense, especially if the auditors are recommending it. Certainly something we should look at approving.
And the change orders would also only be approved, it would be consistent with the spec of the job. So if the spec called out for the, the work to be done, and it was the work that the change order was caused from was something that was clearly outside of the spec, but so our engineering consultants, WSB and things like that, that's something that's watched closely, that if there's a change order that comes in, is it a change order because it was not specified in the work, or why, what's triggering the cause for a change order?
Another question, just mainly about the purchasing policy and going through here. I know I had this question before. Do we have any kind of language that recognizes who has authority to make purchases on behalf of the city? Is there any language in, I guess where I'm getting at here is, would it make sense for us to adopt on another amendment to just clearly outline that only authorized city personnel can make purchases on city accounts? So an example might be if we have a subcontractor that we use work for, but then they go and make purchases on behalf of the city. Are they authorized to do that, or do they need to run it through the department or the city manager or whatever? Is there any language in our purchasing policy currently that addresses that?
I can review it further and get back to you on that. I'd have to,
I would definitely support it and make sure that that's in there.
Scott, do you mean beyond the grid that they had up there? Because it laid out dollar amounts and who can make.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying in general, like
that.
do we have an outline of only authorized personnel
Right.
can make purchases on behalf of the city, and then further define who is an authorized personnel? So it's the finance director, public works director, electric superintendent, city manager.
Yep, so that-
And then if down the road, we say, well, we really need the city clerk to also be authorized to make purchases, we'd add her to that list. And then that way, if certain circumstances arise where there's vendors doing work
Right.
on behalf of the city, and they know that, well, we know the city of North St. Paul has a contract with Home Depot, we're going up there to buy some stuff for this project. Let's buy some, power tools too, and see if they catch it. They wouldn't be allowed to do that because they're not authorized to make
Correct.
purchases on our account. They can make purchases on their own account and then turn around and bill it to us, which I think is kind of normal practice, but
That should definitely be part of the policy.
And I would agree with that. Kyle?
so it doesn't specifically say only employees or specified employees, but inherently all expenditures made by city employees.
yeah, okay, so that is under the public purpose.
Yeah.
So I was looking at,
Not specifically saying who.
didn't seem like in our city's purchasing policy as a whole, it addresses several areas, but it doesn't necessarily define who is authorized to make purchases on behalf of the city and who those people are. And again, that example of, we hire Mack and Meyer to paint the wall, and they come in and they start painting the wall, and they run to Home Depot and they buy a bunch of stuff on our account. Say, oh, charge it to the city of North St. Paul. That I think puts us in a position to where unless we have someone that's watching every single purchase like that and make sure that stuff like that isn't happening, it creates an opportunity for a subcontractor or someone to make unauthorized charges on our account that aren't related to the work that they were hired to do.
And I think I would also take it a step farther than that also, is that these accounts that are set up with vendors be reviewed on minimally on an annual basis, because as some of these, people could be added to the account, and whether those employees are still here or not, those names may be still listed on accounts that are out there, so that we follow that up on, whether it's semi-annually or, whatever it might be, but to make sure that any of those are updated and updated annually on a minimum basis.
I'm assuming we do have a list of the vendors that we work with.
Sure.
Yes, we would have that in AP.
We would have that. And then do we,
And- Oh, sorry, a lot of the ways we can, it's just known vendors as well. We can, Menards, Home Depot, those kind of,
And
and then we have accounts with them.
yeah.
the list goes on, all over, and as employees leave, to make sure that we take it upon ourselves to go back and make sure that that employee has been removed from an authorized purchaser of the city. Maybe that employee is no longer here, and they're still on the account for a year, who knows, whenever. A lot of times if that, the next time a new employee comes on, to make sure the old ones are removed or any updates, so summer seasonal help, for example, that might be out authorized to go purchase, is purchasing gas for mowers or things like that. And to make sure that those are updated constantly on a seasonal basis to make sure that they're removed and not left on.
How do these vendors work? If you go to a cashier at Menards and you just say City of North St. Paul,
Yep.
I don't think they're looking at you as, does it have it on there? Who's
They've got a,
who's required to make the
they've got-
purchase, or do you just?
they've got a list of authorized people, a list of names. But again, that list of names could have been there for,
10 years.
yeah, exactly. So I think those are a couple of really good points to make sure that we put in place with this.
City Attorney, you look confused.
I think well, I'm just not familiar with the process of buying on the account in terms of what verification is required. I think a lot of cities use a credit card, and then only those who've been issued it by the department. I mean, do we really keep a list of names at Menards?
Yeah, they do.
They
Because,
should keep that list.
yeah, the Menards would keep the list, or those
Or
would keep those lists.
Maybe
Yep.
we just eliminate that completely and we say, if you want to go to Home Depot, you have to use the only department issued credit card. And that's how, there is no purchasing on account.
Right.
Just get rid of all that.
Yep.
I mean, that would end this completely and we wouldn't even need to comment on it because we don't have an account at Home Depot. We don't have an account at Menards.
Mhm.
You need to go up there. You have to have the manager, or the authorized purchaser, which would be the department head. And I think that's why this is probably done, because it's, to avoid the department head having to make 9 trips up to Ace Hardware when they were here
Sure.
to buy various things. They had an account. You say, go up there, tell them you're with the city. They ask you for a PO, say it's for Casey Park or whatever it is they're working on. But, that opens us up for some precarious situations. And I think also, I'm on page 6 now of the pot purchasing policy. I guess I don't know if that would make sense to add it in this section of the ethics relations with vendors, but, another thing we might want to consider adding is some sort of provision that where if we're using a contractor and you are in a position with the city, you're not allowed to use them personally. And so an example might be if TA Shifsky's is doing paving and our public works director wants to have his asphalt driveway replaced, he can't use them because there could be at least the appearance of, there's some kickback or something going on. I mean, something where we're separating out the use of city personnel using city vendors. I don't know if that's kind of standard language in other cities or something, but I think that might make sense to consider, just to add in as another protection for the city.
And I would question City Attorney, what do you see in
Well,
other
I'm
cities?
familiar with the nepotism issues, if you use friends, family, whatever, there's concerns about that. Your personnel policy does have a provision on that, whether that squarely addresses what you're talking about, Councilmember Thorson. the prohibiting employees from using vendors. So, I mean, technically Home Depot and Menards are vendors. Are we saying you can't go shop at Home Depot because you work for the city of North St. Paul?
Okay, maybe I phrased that wrong. That's obviously
I see
not
where
the
you're
kind
going.
of example I'm thinking of. I think, okay, so what if if you are in a position to authorize or award a bid, okay? If you are in a position to award a bid to for a contract for any type of work.
Right.
There should be some verbiage or language or understanding or just our city policy that says, if our public works director is in charge of awarding bids, if we're gonna do a landscaping project at Casey Park from Mack and Meyer for hire landscaping, it's probably inappropriate for that individual to use Mack and Meyer for hire landscaping at his own home. It just doesn't, appearances aren't well, and, there certainly is, situations that may arise that could create some inappropriate circumstances. So it's certainly not to say, hey, welcome to the city of North St. Paul. Hope you don't shop at Home Depot, because you're not allowed to do that anymore. I mean, that's not at all what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is that type of particular circumstance. If you're awarding contracts for bids, you shouldn't be using contractors of that work at your own personal home or your cabin or whatever. That's all.
Yeah, no, I think I do get your point. The idea is look, I'm going to guarantee you a bunch of work through the city at full rate. But now that you come over to my house, I want a discount to make sure that it keeps rolling at the city. That was a previous problem. Not necessarily here, but that is something that's been dealt with. I can look into the language, the exact verbiage on that, if that's something we're interested in. But I'm assuming we want to dial in on the kind of vendors, if it was, to have your driveway replaced, or if somebody we're routinely using that comes in at the $2 to $3 grand, so it's kind of direct negotiation with the city anyway. We want to make sure that that process isn't being abused or favors aren't being given.
Yeah, just, because I'm just thinking off the top of my head, what circumstances where this chart, if it's anything less than $20,000, I mean, there's all sorts of, concrete patching throughout the city. I mean, hey, I got a slab of concrete, I need poured up north. I'll make sure you get the job if you can help me out on it. There's those sorts of things where if we have this in there, it's just, and if it were to happen, they can't use an excuse of, well, I didn't know I couldn't do that. It didn't say so. I mean, you think these things are kind of given and understood that you don't have to spell it out in a ethics and relations with vendors. But, I think it's, while we're on the subject, it might make sense to look into that.
One of the other processes that'll be coming along with this, with our OpenGov software, is a purchase order system. Many years ago, we had purchase orders that were used across the board for all purchases, no matter how big or small they were. That has not been in place for a number of years. And part of the process here will be having a purchase order system back in place.
May I?
Councilmember
Yeah.
Warren.
Yeah, I think that investigating the language is really critical, because I think a lot of folks try to contract locally too. And so I can see where there may be concerns about, the appearance of or, usage of one vendor or what have you. But I think the language certainly is going to be key there, just because people like to support local too, whether we're the city or people in the community.
You scroll up a little bit, that's actually right. We have a local vendors provision in here, where city employees will make every effort to purchase goods and services from local vendors and award purchases to those vendors when cost effective. This can be accomplished by ensuring that local and state vendors who have goods or services available are included in the competitive shopping process that will precede most purchases. So
I suppose that's where it gets a little difficult in regards to
Well, and that's where you're trying to achieve a balance. It certainly makes, we understand the local vendor provision, why it's there. With that said, we can't turn it into an unfair environment where we're feeding information to the local vendor to make sure they get the contract too. So it's trying to achieve a balance. I think it does a decent job on that. As it relates to Councilmember Thorson's point about then how do we use some of these vendors, I think we can tweak that a little bit. But as I understand it, we're not talking about all vendors. We're really talking about sort of the more discretionary vendor situations.
Yeah, I mean,
Because truly, you know, I knew you weren't talking about Home Depot, but they are a vendor where we spend some money.
yeah, and even the drive, I mean, I'm not trying to say like, well, now that you're an employee here, I hope you don't ever need a driveway because you're not allowed to ever use shift skis, you know, and it's just, if you are in a position to award a contract or something like that, which is very few people in the city, the way we're structured, there should be some language in there that states, you know, there should be some separation, or, you know, just to avoid even the perception of, you know, that. But I think everyone understands the point I'm trying to make here.
Yep.
So we'll go through some of this stuff and update the items that Kyle was talking about and the items that you've talked about now, have our city attorney review it and bring it back for your consideration.
Anything else, Kyle, on the policies?
Nothing further.
Any questions for Kyle? Okay. Civic clerk implementation.
Mayor, Council, the next item is our civic clerk implementation, and have Carrie talk about that. That changes some of the format that you've been seeing, and though everything right now is still coming out in a PDF version, eventually in the coming soon, it will be in the program itself, and I'll let Carrie speak to that.
Welcome, Carrie.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. I hope we've been through 2 packets now where you have seen our new tool in action. And we appreciate your understanding as we as staff learn how to manage this new tool. I just kind of want to update you on some of the many benefits this is going to bring not only to staff, but also to you as elected officials. I can tell you on Friday, we had a flurry of information that came in. And if we would have had to reconstruct this packet like we did even, 4 or 5 months ago, I think we'd still be here working on it. The updates that came from Councilmember Wong, it was a few clicks and a drag, and we're able to get the most important information out. And I think that's really the thing we need to keep in mind is what is the best way we can get you the information you need to make the important decisions for our city. So there's been a couple glitches. It's been a learning curve, but I'm really pleased with how well staff has worked with this. The other benefit we have is our team from WSB uses this tool with other cities. And we had some issues with some resolutions, and, as an email to Eric, 3 minutes later, he's logged into our system, he's updated the content, and the ability to be able to do that kind of on the fly and get everything together really is going to be hopefully a huge benefit to you and to our residents as we get this stuff together. I myself, when I first started here with the city, didn't realize all of the hands that go into a packet. There's stuff coming from the county, there's stuff coming from staff, there's stuff coming from our legal. And so this has really been a good way for us to build these tools. So what you've seen the last couple times, and those of you who've been on Parks Commission, we've also, in Planning Commission, we've put a couple agendas out in that tool as well. So you've kind of seen the look and feel of it. The big reason we went to Civic Clerk was, again, to streamline the efficiency and the effectiveness of how we could put these packets together. So if you look in your packet, these are the meeting types that we're going to move into this tool here. We're going to, City Council, the HRA, Arts and Culture Commission, our Economic Development Authority, Parks and Recreation, Planning, Fire, Police Department. We also recently, after discussing with city staff, are going to add in a separate city workshop meeting type, and that's due to the different Zoom links that we have. And so in order to protect any, inadvertent errors that we may have, and the workshops also have a little bit of a different meeting structure. We will have a separate meeting type for the workshop as well. So where we're at right now is we're just about ready to give you, our elected officials, access to the back end of our tool. And I wanted to make sure that I had a moment to speak to you about it. I didn't want you to get some email and wonder like if it's spam as we set up your accounts. I did create, if you look, there's a link in the packet here. I did load a video on our website for you to watch that kind of talks about, as an elected official, what's the best way to use this tool. Some of the things, sitting here and watching you guys tonight, that'll be really helpful for you is there's a way for you to go into those meeting packets and put your questions in, annotate, highlight things, put your questions in, see things that will help our meetings run better and help you to be better prepared. The other feature, and we really haven't done it yet, but there is a search function in this tool where we can put in different hashtags. So if there are certain projects that we're following along, we'll create a hashtag. And so that way, whenever you want to search the tool, it'll bring up any resolutions, any items that we've done. And I really would ask that you as our council members would maybe let me know or let staff know the things that are really kind of near and dear to your heart that you want to follow so that we can put those tracking tools in there for you as well. So the next steps is our vendor is going to capture the data from our existing website. So there will be some history that's going to move into this. We decided that 2020 was maybe not the finest year for any city, so we're going to go back and pull everything in from 2019 going forward. So there will be some history in there for you to be able to review and search. You'll get your login. You'll be able to log right into the tool and see the packet that staff has assembled for you. That will get away from this kind of crazy downloading stuff off the shared drive and finding those kinds of links. The nice thing about that is there's one agenda. You don't have to worry about, oh, did somebody pull an old agenda and there was an update I missed? That won't happen anymore because you're going to all log into the portal and see the existing information as it is there. So I think that's going to be a big help. The other big help for us as staff is that instead of all these emails flying around between all of our offices, oh, put this in the packet, Jenny, put this in the packet. Everything gets uploaded directly from staff. So there's no, oh, I didn't grab the right version. It's going to really, really help us clean up and tighten some of the information that gets presented to you as council members. So tomorrow, I will be sending to Civic Clerk your email addresses. They'll come to your city email addresses for you to log in and set up your portal. There's been another big reason we wanted to go to this was we've struggled with trying to just put things together in Adobe PDF to have the bookmarks work. This tool, the bookmarks work quite a bit better. Those of you, I understand a lot of you are accessing the meeting on iPads. There is an app, there's a couple of different apps that you can download that will help you with that navigation on your tablet devices. And what I'll do is I'll kind of put together a couple of recommended apps and some screenshots to help you kind of coach you through that setup. Again, if you have any issues, I'm certainly available. You know, bring your laptop, bring your tablet to City Hall and we'll sit down and get it working for you. But in theory, you'll be able to log into the portal. You won't need to worry about that because as you're working on Civic Clerk in your elected officials portal, all the bookmarks will be right there for you to kind of scroll right through. Is there any questions I can answer for
I
anybody?
like the idea of being able to come in and sit down and you can run everything.
We'll have like a Civic Clerk party.
There we go.
No, I'm really happy. And I have to say, I am so proud of staff because in the little over a year I've been here, we have brought on so many new programs and so much new technology. I'm surprised they haven't chased me out of town, frankly. But I'm so proud of staff. They have really worked hard. Everybody's working the best they can to really clean up some of our processes, clean up this information flow so we can get it out. So there'll be a whole new module that will take place on our website. If you look in now, there's kind of that goofy agenda module. And so all of our Civic Clerk meetings, as soon as we're ready, as soon as I say, yep, we're ready, they will pull that different module and add the Civic Clerk module into our website. So also for our residents too, it'll be a lot easier for them to log in and see, oh, here's the meeting, here's the link, here's the Zoom link, and here's my agenda, so that our residents can follow along with us as well.
And I think that's another very important part of this is how the residents are going to be able to log in and to get the information.
There is going to be a little bit of a communication challenge for us, and I left it in my planner on the floor. But we do have residents who've subscribed for alerts. And I took a look at that because I thought, we're going to have to notify them. There's not a good way for me to export that connection data and put it into the new tool. It has to do with a lot of data privacy stuff and issues that Civic Clerk deals with. I think there's like 57 people that subscribe for council updates, 37 for EDA. They weren't huge numbers, and that kind of thought, well, this will make my job easier, but then it kind of made me sad that there's so few people that are following our agendas. So what we'll do is I will export that data and we'll send a series of emails out and texts or however these people have opted to communicate with the city to let them know about the new tool and where they can sign up to continue to get the alerts that they've gotten. As part of that, I hope we can, through our web channels and our social media, really encourage our residents, to take a fresh look, log in and follow our meetings and take a look at our agendas. So there's going to be a little bit of a housekeeping. There'll be a little bit of growing pains there as we transition that. But once I got a chance to log in and look at the back end of our system, it's not as significant as I thought it would be.
Is there an app function that the public can access it like we can?
They will, but theirs will be the front end app. So they'll come from the website and they'll log into the meeting and download the agenda. They could download it into any kind of PDF marker they want to make their own notes on it, but they certainly don't have the functionality that elected officials will have. But there's so often when I'm watching these meetings, people are scrambling through paper and looking, and I'm a tech geek, I'll admit it, but to be able to search and make notes and go back and reference it, in this other meeting, and all those notes that you make into your meeting packets stay there. You hit save and they're there. So 6 months later, we're dealing with the same issue. You want to go back and look at what your questions were they answered? Did I get the information that I requested? You'll have a much easier way to go back through your portal and take a look at that.
Thank you.
welcome. Any other questions? I really encourage you. I have the link there to the website. I do have a page there so you can log in. It's a cute little video that shows you the tools that are available to you as elected people. And I will put together some cheat sheets for you and some screenshots on how to use some of these apps to make them work on your iPad, if that's how you choose to do it. If you totally don't want to embrace our new technology, you can download the PDF just like you always have. But I hope that you'll take advantage of these new tools. And again, I really encourage you to reach out to staff. If there's something that you're passionate and you want to follow about and you want us to tag some of these items so that we can follow them through the process here, we're happy to do that.
So are the iPads technology friendly with Civic Clerk?
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think even some of the things we've done graphic wise, appealing to our packet to get them branded with our city, add some different fonts and white spaces too. I think the easier things are on the eye. Again, I'm speaking from my graphic, snobbiness of doing websites for years, but the easier things are on the eye, the more likely people are to read them. And that's some of the stuff that we're working with as well, so that our content for our residents, for our elected officials is easily accessible, easy on the eyes, really easy to follow, easy to bounce through the bookmarks to see the other resources that are put together for you.
I know, Carrie, you've been working very, very hard on this, and
See the gray hair?
staff is, but I know there is glitches too, and
It's been a learning curve, but I am so proud of the staff here at North St. Paul, because some of the programs we put in place here, we have turned the way they do their jobs absolutely upside down. And when I see the building permits flowing through OpenGov, when I see packets being put together, when I see our park rentals are running seamlessly, pinging all weekend long, those are huge changes to how city staff have done their jobs. And the team here has been nothing but willing to learn, willing to ask questions, and every single day we try to make it better.
we should get a 360 review on Carrie and staff just to
I think
see how you're.
I think the other thing that shows out with this is that, we've always talked about over years about to implement it. And these things just took off on their own. I mean, Carrie can comment on when we were starting this, we had one of the programs that wasn't even ready yet, but it had a public facing, and people are utilizing it immediately.
This is where I get fired because I didn't promote it. All I did is switch a couple links on the website and OpenGov took off.
Really?
We've talked about the cities going to this, but we've never promoted it. We just made sure that the website worked, that the instructions were in place. I've had a couple other cities call me and they're going, well, we're at OpenGov and we're not getting any of our stuff. And I logged on their website. I go, I can tell you exactly why. You haven't made it easy for people to find it. But again, this was a really huge change for staff and for all of us. And I got a crash course in permits. I think I can electrical still scare the daylights out of me, but I can do a building permit. But again, this doesn't happen in a vacuum. There's a great team of people here at City Hall that are asking questions, challenging things to be better, and really doing our best. We've had some hiccups. There's a learning curve. But when I think of what this team here has accomplished in the last year, I couldn't be prouder.
Thank you very much. Councilmember.
Yeah, just real quick, sorry, I know you probably won't get out of here, but, so was I understanding you correctly when you said as the council packet is being constructed, we as a council will have access to that as it's being put together? Or
Yep, as long as we have it public, you will see what's
Okay.
there. Yes.
And then, so just like Councilmember Wong was able to send you information that got updated,
Mhm.
that, so if, I guess, for an example, if, like last week, I believe, yeah, John's here. He pointed out in, I think it was the Met Council application that there was an incorrect name, it was old staff name. So if that was updated at some point, we could log in and as we're going through, we could just click and highlight it or we could change it to
No,
correct it, or we
We
just.
would correct it.
But we could highlight it and send some notification.
And in fairness, staff did talk about that was a historical documents. We don't think it was an incorrection.
Okay, well, that's what maybe the correct one had the right stuff, but just
Yeah,
whatever.
we talked too,
Yeah. But, and that's a good scenario where, and I had that same question
Mm-hmm.
too. Could the public log in and provide feedback at that? Because the way it works now is basically Friday at 4:30, the packet's uploaded.
And we try, I can't tell you how hard we try to have that be earlier, but things are moving fast and we want to give the most complete information. And I know there's been comments about, oh, there's multiple agendas. It's because we're trying to make them
Mhm.
perfect. There was a spacing that was off. There was a font that was off and we fixed it.
Sure, but but I guess and I'm sure once we use it more, we'll understand it, but from my understanding is as this stuff gets uploaded, because there's some times where there's a 3-week period of time where we don't have a meeting. And if we know, well, there's some rough agenda put on there and some rough
You'll
material.
be able to log into
We
the
can
portal
log in and see
as
that
it
way
is.
ahead of time. And then if we have additional information, we say, hey, we're.
Or if that triggers something like, oh, I need staff to look into something else because I didn't think about this.
So it'll be a little more interactive.
And even for staff, I can tell you, we are building packets into July already because there's certain housekeeping things that we know we need to have in place. And this gives us a better tool to do it. And frankly, really, Councilmember Wong, that attachment you sent, if we were doing it the old fashioned way, we would have all been running out of City Hall because that would have broke all of our links. It would have messed up our page numbers and there would have been tears. Now it's like, oh, out it goes.
Right.
You
But
know,
it will help, to Councilmember Thorson's comment, it will help build the agenda because if, as we're building it right now, we're building it based on what we know. And as that's coming together, if there's information that you would like to add or a subject, that's a great way to be able to do it.
our ultimate goal is to make it easy and complete so you can make the best decisions, is to make it accessible and readable so that our residents can see the information you're basing your decisions on.
But we're
Right.
not adding topics, like you said, are we be able to, council members want to put something into for this workshop or whatever? We're not going to be adding.
You wouldn't
Yeah.
add it, but at least you can see what's there and then you can interact with staff right
You
away
can
to say,
see what-
I'd like
if we
to
can
add
add
this
something
because I
or-
didn't see this in the agenda or this has triggered another idea. I'd like to add this to it. Yes.
But I am really excited about the noting and the highlighting and stuff because I just think it's going to make our meetings run smoother. And as elected officials will help you be more prepared. That's what people elected you to do, was to make notes and ask questions. And this tool will make that a lot easier for you to do. But again, I can't say enough. We're a phone call away, we're an email away. Walk in. the only way it's going to work is if we all work together, and we are more than happy to answer questions, to do some test runs with you on your portal and on your bookmarks and whatever way we can help. And if you have suggestions on how things could be better, don't sit on them, let us know, and we'll check. Some things we can fix, some things we can't.
Right.
Who else is going to talk? Yeah.
Sorry, I just had a clarification on the noting and highlighting piece because I am very excited about that.
You can pick your colors of your highlighter too.
Sorry about this, but I'm way more excited. So as we make comments and highlights and things, is that for our own
Correct.
visibility, or
Correct.
is
Yeah,
that?
no, it's
okay?
private. Whatever is saved in your account is your private notes. Those aren't published out to the
Okay.
public, but you draw arrows, you can highlight, you can make notes, you can put like digital Post-it notes on certain areas.
Yeah, I just didn't know if people wanted to read my chicken scratch, so.
Well,
thank
I
you.
think we should
Or we
clarify.
could maybe, if you wanted to, I mean,
This is a great point. I'm glad you asked that. But if someone does a data request for Councilmember Wong's notes, that has to be provided, correct?
it's in the portal.
Right.
It would be available.
Right.
I'm just saying,
They could say, boy,
Just
she
so we're
has
all
good taste
clear.
in highlighter color.
just so we all have a clear understanding that you can make all the notes you want, but it's still public information if they want to request it, so.
Councilmember Cole.
Councilmember Wong asked same question about, that's fine.
But again,
And if I make notes in my copy, I mean, does
it's for
that,
your use only. Mhm.
but can someone ask to see?
I suppose somebody could. It's not really like you're changing the content. You're writing a note like, I make sure I ask city manager about this, or I'd like more information on this. I mean, I don't think you're changing the function of government. You're making notes to help yourself be prepared for the meeting and to raise the questions that you want to ask as a council member or a commissioner or whatever board you're on.
I think city attorney would love to
Well,
say a
I
couple.
don't know the pure answer to it. What I'll tell you is data is presumed public and your individual notes plus the packet are in the city's possession. So whether, if they ask for, I want to see Councilmember Thorson's portal with his notes, I can't immediately think of a reason why we could deny it. But there are some opinions out there on note-taking and things of that nature in terms of whether it truly qualifies as government data or personal. I need to take a second look at that, but it's a legitimate question
yeah.
because you.
It's different than like me doing this, right?
Right.
Because
Well-
this is not, I guess someone could request these too, right?
Right.
But I just wanted to clarify that. So
No,
people aren't under the impression that you can just, write whatever and that no one.
Don't say
will-
bad things about staff or we'll feel.
Yeah.
But again, I just want you to know that we will do everything we can within our power to make sure that people who have subscribed to our updates transfer, seamlessly into this new tool. And now that I know kind of what our benchmarks are, I hope we can grow those numbers and we can have more of our residents who are actively getting notifications when we're publishing agendas. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie, very much. I'm going to put a hard stop here in about 5 minutes because they need 10 minutes to turn over the, so if we could just get a quick update, operational updates.
So just a couple real quick things. So Quick Trip is getting geared up to get their project started. We're actually planning to start talking about installing water main and things. They had a little misfire with their plan that they had put through. They missed installing a fire protection system in their building, a fire sprinkler system. In some locations, they do not have to do that depending on, rural areas or where they might be building. In North St. Paul here and many of the cities around us here, we've adopted the code 1306, which requires fire sprinkler systems. And that was omitted from this project. So they're scurrying to get that put in place because that directly affects water main and things that they're putting into the building. But everything is moving along quickly. Quick Trip is outstanding to work with. They have everything planned out, prepared, and their time commitment to build this is, as we talked about before. They were in the building today for the first time. Today was their first day of starting their job fair. And, you know, when you think about a convenience gas store such as what they are, the number of employees that they're looking to hire from our community to work there is pretty amazing. They're looking at a minimum of hiring 55 employees to work at that store. So it's a good effect for our community. And today was their first day in the building here to promote their hiring process. Just want to give you a little update. We're moving along very well with the hiring process for our police chief, our position of open police chief, and also finance director position. Civil Service Commission had worked all through the past week on doing interviews. We've got that narrowed down, and really hoping to have something coming forward with that by the weekend. And moving along in the same process with the finance director position. One thing I just want to bring up real quick for thought, and this is something that we're going to have to bring back and talk about on processes for our park rentals. A couple of years ago, we eliminated the deposits on park rentals. And unfortunately, I think it's something that we're going to definitely have to look at reinstating. This weekend was no different from what we've been experiencing recently. Just to some extent, the disrespect and the what's left over after these picnics and parties in the buildings is getting out of control. We had it at Casey Park this weekend, and we also had the same thing at Howley Park this weekend. So it's something that I just wanted to get out there on your radar, but it's something that we're going to need to bring back soon as we're becoming heavy into the season, and it's unfortunate.
Councilmember Cole.
Is that something, Scott, we can enact whenever?
Yes.
Or, okay, so
Yep, we could do it right away with council approval. Like I said, we eliminated the deposit that we had, and we did that a couple of years ago because we were taking deposits in for a long time. If we had one bad one through the year was good, but and dealt with it. But this has just been becoming very repetitive, and it's very concerning. I also had conversation this afternoon with Sheriff Fletcher because some of these are, out of the city, and I was talking to them about what they might be seeing in their parks and things going on. So just a lot of things are different this year, and whether it's coming out of COVID and people are back out and doing things, but we didn't experience what we're experiencing right now prior to.
that was actually a follow-up I was going to ask you on over break was what was property left looking like after yesterday?
Yeah. Parking lot, grounds, everything else was just in total disrepair and cleanup, and it's just a mess. As far as people using trash barrels and things like that, yes, some of them do, but a lot of the stuff is just thrown on the ground and left in total disregard.
Councilmember Thorson.
Is this something that we've just seen exclusively to these enclosed shelters, or is this the same behavior going on at every park, or what?
Yeah, I think, Housley Park, Silver Lake, the Silver Lake Open Air Shelter, and those they're not necessarily always rented per se. It's open to the general public, but just the respect for our parks and facilities and keeping them clean and picked up is a pretty dramatic change what we're seeing right now.
Anything else?
That's good for that.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Cole, second by Councilmember Peterson. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Hi.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned. And we'll